Alright, I am back for part 2 of the Walkera 2801 Pro menu settings and setup. I am just sharing my knowledge, or lack thereof, of this transmitter. And for the part 1, I went through all of these if you haven't seen that yet. And the part 2, I will focus on this model set setting. So we'll go out, you hit enter to go into the menus. One thing I didn't mention on the last one, this shows your voltage of your transmitter. And these trims, I don't use the trims. I try to set it all up without having to use these trims. Except for my little CB100. Okay, so this is for the Walkera V400 DO2. I do have other Walkeras and Align helicopters if you hadn't watched the other part 1. Okay, model set. So, we'll go ahead and start at the top here. Reverse. This is the channels, all of those channels that you plug into your receiver. The elevator servo, you're physically, like, if it moves the wrong way, and your elevator should always move, you know, forward and backwards. Let's say you see this servo is not doing what you think it should be doing, pulling down and up, then you need to reverse that. And for these Futaba servos, I had to reverse all 3 of them, and the gyros were incorrect because of the whole tilting. And when it tilts, it didn't immediately try to keep at the horizon. It'll immediately go and slowly go back, so don't let that trick you too, because that kind of got me at first. It was just so quick that it tries to correct itself, and if it doesn't correct itself right away, it'll just like kind of slowly go back to its position. But you should see it trying to correct itself and keep itself with the horizon. So if that's not working, you might have to turn your receiver around. If that is working, but you're still, first, before you even know if that's going to work, you have to set up this right here and set all your servos up. So right here, make sure this is working. Forward, back, left, right. And I had to reverse all 3, the elevator, aileron, throttle. I've left the same on all my helicopters, I believe, in normal. Yours may be different. Rudder, I have had to reverse that on one of mine. I know my rudder servo, it was going the wrong way. Gear, that's one of the things I don't use. One of the ports. You can use this for like landing gear or something. The retractable landing gear. Pitch, I had to reverse that. That's my pitch servo. Most of the helicopters, you'll see the right side is aileron, left side is pitch, and then it'll be either in the front or the back, but it's the one that tilts the swash plate this way. That'll be your elevator. And some servos, I've heard people actually have to reverse where they plug them into the receiver. So most important is that you check your movements before you put your blades on and try and take off, that your swash plate moves correctly with both moving and the stick, cyclic control. Sub trim, on this helicopter, I actually leveled my swash plate just by using the links, but what I am going to do, what I've been doing now, or my last setup, I've read a couple of places that you can go ahead and use a sub trim before you set it up, and it shouldn't affect your flight characteristics unless you're like extremely off and you're going to reach the ends of your servo travel. But I've never been nowhere near the ends of my servo travel, so I just use the sub trim when setting up my 3GX the last time I set it up, and it seems to work fine. So what this does, it'll just, you can see when you're at middle stick, you can see like you want to, this one right here, middle stick, you want these to be at 90 degrees, your servo arms. So you set your sub trim to set up to make your servo arms at 90 degrees. And make sure your middle stick, and there's a little switch on the receiver. Different receivers are different, but this one you can actually flip that little switch and it'll turn off your gyroscopes. So it'll be a purely mechanical setup. You want to go to usually 50%, set your blades at the 50% and all that stuff. And then you would set up your sub trim at that time. Alright. So that's that. Travel adjust. I haven't messed with these. I've left them all at 100%. These will like limit or increase the amount of travel in your servos. So far I've had plenty of travel in all of mine, and there's other ways to limit your travel for specific parts. So I'll get into that later. All of my helicopters I have at 100%. SWATs, this swash mix doesn't do anything. I don't. The app mix, I've left all at 0, so don't know what exactly that is. I haven't messed with any of these. Gyro hold, this one. Gyro sensors. This is mostly for like your tail and your tail mode, and I've always left it in 70% or 80%, 75%. I want to mess with this, but I believe this is like the what they call head hold and rate mode. Head hold holds it to the helicopter, the head straight all the time. So you push it over, it'll turn while you're pushing it over, and you let go and it just stops. Well, what the rate mode is, you turn it and it'll just keep on going, and for you to stop it, you actually have to go the other way to get it to level it and level it out yourself. So I kind of want to mess with that one, but I haven't messed with that too much yet. That's why I have these set up different for this switch. One important thing, though, you want to make sure, if you want similar flying characteristics in all your modes, see this? See this right here? Normal, stunt, and hold. That is these switches up here. The stunt mode, and this is hold, and then this all the way back is normal. And you see the 0 and the 1, 0, 1, 0. Well, you can change this, and if you have this different, then automatically when, let's say you have stunt mode at 1, automatically when you go into your stunt mode, you're going to end up with a 40% rate. So you got to be careful that you don't do that. Unless you want to, of course. DR and EXP. Oh, I missed one. In gyro hold, there is also throttle hold. This is where you set your throttle hold position. It is this switch up here. I want my motor completely off immediately, like absolutely 0 power going to it. So I put it at negative 16%. I use that, when I'm just carrying the helicopter around or setting up something. I also use it after I land, except for on the V400, because since the tail isn't direct drive, the tail has a different motor. It's not the torque tube. So on my other helicopters, I just flip this switch like right after I land. I land while I'm still in stunt mode, and then just flip that switch, the hold switch. The only time you wouldn't want it on that, I imagine, if you have a gas engine or something and you want to keep a certain amount of throttle open, like your idle. You want to keep your engine idling. And also, you have to turn it on, active on. DR and EXP. This one's important. DR. I have at 85% on this. The lower the number you go, the less of a tilt, side-to-side tilt when you do this that you're going to be able to get. And what this is physically doing, like, this will limit your ends. So you can see that, like this and this, it changes what that would be. And you can see if let's say I move it way down, you see how the ends... You see how the ends just came down? You're physically like limiting. You're saying this is no longer 100%. This is only 64%. So instead of it being, this makes it where it used to be right here. And what that's doing is limiting the up and down motion. I don't know if you could tell the difference, like the back and forth when you do that. So I played with that one And on my 3GX, on these, a lot of the helicopters, I just kind of got a generic something that worked. On my 3GX, I actually set it up to get like a plus and minus 9%, I believe, on that. So I limited my DR to get that plus and minus 9%. The EXP, that's something a little bit different, but also affects the same stick and how it is. And what that does, it'll soften out the center and make the edges like really strong, like a lot of change on the edges. So your center might feel soft, but then if you go over here, it's exponentially more. See, look, so if I turn it up, it softens out the center, but then when I get like right about here on this curve, it just all of a sudden drops off, and like, so you're gonna get a lot of control. So I kind of like that pretty linear with a little bit of softening in the center. And the trick about setting up for stunt mode here is, so you go through and do this for all the aileron. I'll tell you the stunt mode thing in a second here. You'll do that for the aileron, the rudder. I just leave it 100% in linear. I think I limited it on one of my helicopters. I've left it linear on all of them. Here you want to make sure you're active, because that means that when you go, same as the other setting, when you go into stunt 1 or stunt 2 or throttle hold, and let's say you're over here when you had to hit throttle hold, well, if your DR and EXP are way different between stunt mode and regular mode, your helicopter is just going to do something completely different than what it was doing before. So that's why I like to leave them all on and all the same. Now, when setting up for stunt mode, here's a little thing that I thought, this caused me blade strike and feathering shaft and main shaft, I think, at the time. A couple blades is what it cost me. I thought I had it all set up in stunt mode when I was getting ready to try out stunt mode for the first time on this one. And it, what I didn't realize, I thought that these switches were the only ones that changed your DR and EXP, so I set up both of them the same. Let me see if I can do that. Or something. Yeah, so I thought that these were the only ones that mattered. Well, it turns out that when you set up your DR and EXP, that you actually have to set it up. Let's see if I can get that all. You actually have to set it up. When I flip this switch, see the position 1 and then the position 0. So if I change this in position 1 to 90 and hit enter, and then go back into this, and then watch. If I go out to the position 0, it's 85. Position 1 is 90. So what happened to me was in position 0, it was whatever it was. And position 1 was something completely different. I didn't know that when I hit the flight mode, and I was already in the air at the time, which didn't help. So I'm going to change that back. And you do that for all your elevator, aileron, rudder, and you have to do it for your throttle. Make sure your throttle hold. See, that also has a position 1 and position 0. So you want to make sure that it's all what you want it to be. And what I do, I just make sure it's all the same. I've flipped a bunch of switches and made sure it always looked the same on all of them. So that's DR and EXP and what that does. Basically, it affects your cyclic control right here. The curves. This one you've probably heard people talk a lot about, or you already know about. The throttle curve, pretty straightforward. So this is my normal mode. This one is for this. This is what it's talking about. So normal, stunt 1, stunt 2, and you'll see this. And on this one, you actually can just go through and set it up. But if you're unsure, just flip these switches to make sure your settings don't change. So normal mode, this is where if I want to spool up my 3GX, I don't even have to ever go into normal mode. The controller is really smooth spool up, so I just go straight to stunt mode. But my other helicopters, what I do, the electronic speed controller on that makes a big difference. So what I'll do is spool up slowly here, and I want it to spool up pretty quick, or and then still have a negative pitch, so that way I can flip into my stunt mode when I'm still on the ground, and then take off from there. So these numbers, you see in and out, so that means input of this. See how that's moving? Input, let's say at 50%, I'm right in the middle of this. Output 67. So what the helicopter's seeing is it thinks you're giving it 67% throttle. So these numbers I wasn't too specific about. I just wanted it to spool up quick. So this is just 5 points on your curve. L 1, 2, 3, H. It's 5 points, and that's what plots the line in between those. And then I just had to spool up quick, and then usually I jump over here. 50% throttle on ST1. Since I have that brushless motor, you might want a higher percent, but I usually fly with a higher percent than that anyway, especially if it's windy. Flies better. 70%, this is usually where I fly on this motor. Some of mine I only have stunt 1 and stunt 2, 60, just between 60 and 70 or 65, 75. It just depends on what you want, but I like to kind of give myself 2 ranges, one that makes the battery last a little bit longer, and maybe a slight bit tamer, and one that fights the wind better, which is usually where I end up flying in that one regardless anyway. It's more fun. So, a little faster. Alright, so that's the throttle curves. I have that, and then I have the flatline throttle curve. On these, all the numbers the same, 50%. I don't bump it up on the end because I noticed some tail wag problems. Some people I've seen them bumping up on the ends or whatever. But flatline throttle curve in your stunt 1, stunt 2 is really nice. Then you can get that negative pitch if you want to, and actually push your helicopter down, and your motor doesn't die at the same time you're giving it pitch. So if you're flying normal mode and you want to go down real quick, like descend, then your motor also slows down. You don't really want that usually, so. Flying in this ST mode, if you haven't done that, as long as you have all your settings set up, don't be afraid of it. Like, if you have everything the same, you shouldn't notice any real difference in your flying characteristic. And now pitch curve. That's another one that you want the same throughout everything. On this one, I have this set up. That is, see, when I move up and down, you see that moving. You can see right here, up and down. That's how much are you moving up and down. You're setting that curve. And you're setting it based on this. So that curve is this up and down of your pitch. And on mine, on this one here, I forgot what, like, you can use your pitch gauge and set it up. When you get it set up in the middle, you can see where you're at on the top and the bottom, and limit it based on what you think you need it limited on. More of it will give you a quicker up and down motion, better, quicker pitch pumps, but you got to have a stronger motor too to make sure you don't bog your own motor down. So it's kind of depends on what you want. I like mine pretty linear. This one actually isn't. On some of my other helicopters, it's exactly linear, because then the rest of it, I don't know. It just seems to work pretty well for me like that. So here are the numbers. I have the 25, 40, 50, 60, and 75. And even though these aren't all exactly together, like, you'll notice 25 to 40 is 15%, then I got 10%, 10%, and 15% again. So I tried to make this nice, at least even on top and bottom. And then ST1 mode, that again is this, of course, and that's ST2. That I have exactly the same, and that's another one that's important, that if you want to use the stunt mode, that you keep these the same. ST2, and throttle hold is your throttle hold. So if you hit your throttle hold, you don't want your helicopter to quickly do a bunny hop or slam itself into the ground. So once again, yeah, I laugh a little because I've done that before, both of those. You'd think I would have learned after the bunny hop. Nope, then I went and slammed myself into the ground. That was fun. That was months ago, though, so that's good. This, you want it the same once again. So, and that's that. That's your curves. Program mix. I have these off. I've never used them. Failsafe, never used these either. It probably has to do with I don't know, something to, like, under certain circumstances that you want your helicopter to behave a certain way, like leave the throttle slightly running or something like that. I don't know exactly. Never messed with it. Monitor. This just is monitoring your input, your stick input. And you see when I move left and right, only the aileron one moves. Well, that's because it's only outputting the one servo mode for this helicopter. On the other ones, you'll see the elevator and aileron move. Not elevator, but aileron and pitch both move because, I mean, you can see clearly, like, maybe not clearly, but you might be able to see they both move. But it's just that whole input, that one servo, two servo, three servo, 120-degree thing. But right here, you can see what you're doing. Like here, I'm moving my pitch and stuff like that. All right, then. That's it for the most part. We'll exit out. There's a couple of these guys I haven't messed with. But that's a 2801 Pro. And I'd have to say I don't have any complaints with it so far. I did break these, but that was my own fault. I dropped it on the floor. And Steelheads was kind enough to send me some new ones, so that was good. Extra ones he had. That's it. So if there are any questions, let me know. And thanks for watching. Bye.